Have you ever looked at a movie trailer and thought, this is either going to be unbelievably stupid or one of the greatest experiences of my life? And that's exactly where I am with Hungry. Because on one level, let's be honest, this looks like a very simple pitch. What if Anaconda, but hippo? A group of tourists, a dangerous swamp, a giant killer animal, people getting picked off one by one, panic, mud, screaming, water, teeth. It's not exactly revolutionary. And yet, I watched this trailer and immediately thought, yes, absolutely, I'm in, no notes, put it directly in my fucking bloodstream. I'm Justin Norton Kurtzen, your guide to the occult, the strange, and all things nerd horror. This is Beyond the Veil. On today's episode, we're talking about the trailer drop for the new horror movie, Hungry. And I have to say, whether or not Hungry ends up being good in the prestige sense, it looks like it understands one of horror's oldest and most reliable truths. If you give us the right monster, in the right setting, with the right vibe, we'll go anywhere with you. And what makes this especially fun for Beyond the Veil is that while Hungry's obviously selling itself as a creature feature, the trailer also gives off something else. Something darker, swampier, something that feels, if not fully occult, then at least occult adjacent. Not in the sense that I think this is gonna secretly turn into a movie about ritual magic or ancient bayou cults or demonic possession or anything like that, but in the symbolic sense. Because what this trailer is really selling isn't just a dangerous animal. It's selling appetite. It's selling trespass. It's selling a place that feels like a threshold. And it's selling a monster that begins to feel less like wildlife and more like a devouring force. So today, I want to talk about Hungry from a nerd horror perspective. Does it just look like Anaconda with a hippo? If so, is that lazy? Or is it exactly the kind of glorious, unpretentious horror nonsense we should be celebrating? And most importantly, even if this is just a killer animal movie, are there hints in the trailer that let us read it through a more occult, symbolic, beyond the veil lens? Because honestly, whether this movie is original or not, whether it's brilliant or ridiculous, I already know one thing. I'm gonna see this movie, and I'm probably gonna have a great time. So, let's talk about Hungry. First, let's start with the obvious question. Is this just Anaconda with a hippo? And the answer is, kind of, yes. Structurally, this looks very familiar. A group enters hostile terrain. That terrain isolates them. A predator begins picking them off one by one. The environment itself becomes part of the threat. And the movie starts functioning like a slasher. Except instead of a masked killer, the slasher is a wild animal. And this isn't a new machine, it's a very old machine. You can trace this DNA through Jaws, Anaconda, Lake Placid, Crawl, Deep Blue Sea, Cujo, all the way through a huge lineage of, quote, people trapped with something hungry horror. So if your first reaction to this trailer was, wow, this feels derivative, you're not wrong. But I also think derivative is one of those words that can flatten a genre conversation far too quickly. Because horror, maybe more than almost any other genre, thrives on variation within form. We don't go to a slasher movie because no one's ever thought of a slasher before. We go because we want to see what happens when the old engine gets a new body, a new setting, a new texture, and a new rhythm of violence. And the hippo's actually a pretty inspired choice, because the hippo lives in this bizarre space between absurdity and genuine terror. Pop culture teaches us to think of hippos as funny, chunky, goofy, children's book animals, mascots, cartoon mouths. But real hippos are terrifying. They're huge, territorial, aggressive, unbelievably fast, and violently unpredictable. So right away, the movie's benefiting from a really strong horror contradiction. This is an animal coded in our imagination as silly, but coded in reality as lethal. And horror loves that kind of contradiction. The gap between image and truth is where dread starts to creep in. A shark already feels like a horror animal. A snake already feels like a horror animal. A crocodile, same thing. But a hippo? A hippo feels wrong in a more destabilizing way. It doesn't look sleek or demonic. It looks blunt, heavy, almost ridiculous, which means when it becomes a killing machine, it carries a strange tonal charge. It's not just scary, it's obscene. It's a joke that suddenly bites down. And I think that's part of why this trailer works for me. It understands that the hippo is not just a threat. It's a threat with a weird, almost surreal energy. Now, from a Beyond the Veil perspective, the really interesting question is this. Does the trailer suggest anything deeper than large animal kills people? And I think the answer is yes, but with an asterisk. I don't think the trailer gives us concrete evidence that the film is about the occult in a literal sense. There's nothing here that clearly says curse, cult, possession, demon, witchcraft, forbidden ritual, or any of that. But what the trailer does give us is imagery and atmosphere that invites symbolic reading. The setting matters a lot here. The swamp is one of horror's great liminal spaces. It's neither solid land nor open water. It's unstable, murky, transitional, a place where direction breaks down, where things disappear, bodies sink, and the visible world and the hidden world feel too close together. And liminal spaces are always fertile ground for occult readings, even when a movie never names them that way, because the occult is so often about thresholds, crossings, hidden systems beneath apparent reality, contact zones between order and chaos, civilization and wilderness, the living and the dead, the rational and the mythic. And the swamp already carries that charge before the hippo even enters. Then, the trailer layers in all this fire-lit imagery, darkness, water-bound movement, glimpses of bodies in panic, half-seen threat. And suddenly, the whole thing starts to feel less like a straightforward nature attack movie, and more like a descent into a devouring zone. That doesn't make it a cult, but it does make it resonate deeply with occult logic. And the strongest symbolic thread here, for me, is appetite. This hippo isn't just framed as dangerous, it's framed as ravenous. The title itself, Hungry, is doing a lot of work. Not enraged or feral, not territorial, but hungry. That turns the monster into an embodiment of consumption. And once you do that, you're not just in creature feature territory anymore. You're in mythic territory. The devourer is one of horror's oldest figures. The thing that swallows, the maw, the appetite that cannot be reasoned with, the force that reduces human intention to meat. This is ancient stuff. You see it in monsters, demons, dragons, sea beasts, underworld imagery, and sacrificial narratives. Even in cosmic horror, the devourer is never just an eater. It represents a kind of truth about existence, that we're all, eventually, consumable. And in Hungry, the bayou setting intensifies that feeling, because the trailer doesn't make the swamp feel like a backdrop. It makes it feel like a mouth. And that's where I think the Beyond the Veil reading gets truly interesting. Maybe the hippo's not just an animal in the narrative sense. Maybe in the symbolic sense, it functions like the hunger of the place itself. A threshold appetite, a punishment engine, a force that answers trespass. Now, am I saying the movie is about that? No. I'm saying the trailer's evocative enough that we can read it that way. And honestly, that's one of the joys of horror and horror analysis. Not every movie has to be secretly high theory. Not every trailer has to contain a secret cosmology. Sometimes, symbolic richness appears not because the movie's trying to be profound, but because horror images naturally accumulate meaning. A giant predator in the dark is already more than literal, just like a group lured into hostile terrain is already brushing up against myth. A title like Hungry already suggests more than mere biology. So yes, some of this may be projection, but projection is part of how horror works. Horror invites us to interpret, mythologize, to connect symbols that the film itself may only half understand. And that's especially true in trailers, which are basically little dream packets made out of fear, rhythm, and suggestion. Now, we have to talk about the nostalgia factor, because for me, and I suspect for a lot of people, Hungry's carrying a completely ridiculous but very real extra charge, and that charge is Hungry Hippos. And no, this film is not literally an adaptation of the board game, at least not as far as anything suggests. But come on, the title's doing what it's doing, and for those of us who grew up with that game, there's something deeply funny and deeply perfect about the idea of a horror movie built around a killer hippo called Hungry. That matters more than it maybe should, because one of horror's most enduring powers is its ability to corrupt the familiar. To take something harmless, silly, nostalgic, even juvenile, and reveal the violence lurking inside it. A clown, a doll, a nursery rhyme, a puppet, a suburban home, a summer camp, a children's game. Horror loves asking, what if the thing you associated with comfort or play was always adjacent to terror? And a hippo is such a perfect vessel for that inversion. The childhood image says, harmless, silly fun. The horror image says, giant, wet murder tank. The gap is funny, but it's also genuinely effective. It creates the kind of tonal instability that great camp horror thrives on. Because let's be clear, I do think this movie looks campy, and I mean that lovingly. There's a version of this concept that would feel cynical or lazy, but the trailer, at least to me, feels like it understands the assignment. It seems to know that the premise is outrageous, that the hippo itself is the sell, and it appears to be leaning into the slasher mechanics of that rather than pretending it's making some deeply realistic survival drama. And that's the key. If Hungry was trying to convince me it was serious, capital I important horror, I'd be more skeptical. But as a wild animal slasher with swamp atmosphere, nostalgia weirdness, and a giant devouring beast at the center, that fucking works. And honestly, horror needs more movies like this. Not every horror film has to reinvent the genre. Not every creature feature has to subvert itself into melancholy allegory. Sometimes you just want a movie that says, here is a terrible place, a huge fucking monster, good luck. And if it does that with energy, style, and a couple truly gnarly set pieces, that can be enough. So, where do I finally land on Hungry? I think the skeptical read and the enthusiastic read can coexist. Does it look original? Not especially. Does it look structurally familiar? Yes, very much so. Could you pitch it as Anaconda with a hippo and not be wrong? Absolutely. But is this automatically a problem? No, because originality in horror isn't just about inventing a brand new structure. Sometimes it's about choosing the right image, the right body, atmosphere, the right collision of tones. And a killer hippo in a swamp, framed like a slasher, with the title Hungry and all the accidental childhood board game resonance that comes with it, that is enough to make me show up. And from a Beyond the Veil perspective, even if the movie turns out to be pure shit, I still think the trailer gives us something worth talking about. It gives us Appetite as monster, Swamp as threshold, Devourer as archetype. It gives us trespass, liminality, and the corruption of the familiar. That's plenty. So no, I don't think Hungry is secretly the most original horror movie of the year. But I do think it looks like a gloriously weird, potentially funny creature feature slasher with just enough symbolic atmosphere to make the nerd horror brain light up. And honestly, that may be just the perfect sweet spot. Because whether this movie's profound, derivative, ridiculous, brilliant, or some beautiful, swampy combination of all four, I'm going to see it. I'm going to sit down, I'm going to watch that hippo ruin people's lives, and I'm going to have an amazing time. But I want to know what you think. Does Hungry look like lazy creature feature recycling? Or does it look like exactly the kind of unhinged horror ride the genre does best? And do you think there's any deeper mythic or occult energy in this trailer? Or am I just doing what horror people always do and turning swamp vibes into cosmology? Let me know your favorite killer animal horror movies in the comments, and while you're there, like, subscribe, and ring the bell for more Beyond the Veil. Because out there in the dark water, something is waiting. And apparently, it's hungry.
Horror.
Please like and subscribe for more nerd horror. And we also have another channel called Nerd Horror Stories, a twice-weekly anthology horror series that tells tales of the supernatural, psychological, and unexplainable. So please check out Nerd Horror Stories.